Go ahead.
Um, how much do you want these interactive elements to affect fights? Because I think we can make some really unique fights if we use the environment to our advantage. Like maybe you can turn your or spend your turn making progress to cut down a tree to stop these invading bandits from pursuing you or something like that. Where instead of having the environment disconnected from the combat, have it integrated with contextually sound, you know, interactables.
I like that idea. We'd have to make it so that somehow it's forcing the player to make a choice to put themselves ahead. Because if you did it the other way, like let's just say that in each encounter or every few encounters, there's like a set piece thing where maybe there's a bridge and more reinforcements will cross the bridge if I don't take it out. I should have to allocate someone to doing that on my team, but that doesn't really add to the quick time aspect per se.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of ways to make the environment matter.
Hmm.
Like if you're in a cave, like what does it mean to be in a cave? Like is the combat going to be any different than fighting in a field than fighting in a cave?
It might be that you have clever use of status ailments, like the first turn everyone has blind one.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind too when I said cave.
Yeah, and then like maybe
So
you
your eyes
can,
can adjust or whatever.
yeah, maybe you
Yeah.
can light torches, and those are like quick time or not quick time things, but point and click things. I don't know. It'll be interesting to figure out how we can implement. I really would like to implement these point and click ideas, but I'm trying to figure out what the choice is, or like what the choice becomes for taking action with your character. Like, can you only point and click when it's your character's turn, and I point and click on a torch, or and that ends my turn and takes my basic action? Is that immediately like does the player understand that, or would that even make point and click fun at all? Because then you're wasting an action to do something. So I wonder, sort of, maybe it's something where like the other team or the AI could be. I'm just talking through the system. I don't want to take too much time, but perhaps the AI is trying to do something. Like let's say they're ramming a castle gate, and while you're when it's not your turn, you can take like logs from one side of the field and like grab them and pile them up against the gate door. So your team is like constantly just trying to pile up more logs while they're getting knocked down from the other side, and it doesn't really like doesn't make a ton of sense because your characters wouldn't be doing it, but it does give you something to do. It produces a sense of urgency, and the only thing that it's straining is your attention, which I kind of like.
Mm.
Uh, I think if it wasn't apparent that you could interact with the environments, then it'd be like um, kind of like in Bioshock. If you shoot like find a room of enemies and you kill them all, then you find like an oil slick in the middle of the room, and you're like, oh, I could have just set that on fire, but I accomplished the same goal a different way, uh, just because I wasn't observant enough.
I like that too. Um, we're gonna that's something that could take up a whole nother meeting. So let's save that and do something with that again.
Yeah, we're like talking about some like totally new genre breed thing.
Yeah.
Probably best for its own conversation. But yeah, I thought I should bring it up. So
Okay.
let's move on to how we actually want to think about point and click where it comes to maps and areas that don't include fighting.
Okay. So here's what I was thinking for point and click on the maps. You have your town just like you do in other games that have towns. Yogg being an example.
Yeah.
And David and I were speaking earlier. There's a video of the meeting that we had, and we were talking about maybe a specific encounter in which um, you are tasked with splitting up your party to try and defend a town that was indefensible, sort of. the player is told that it's indefensible and that the siege that goes against it is something that you can't beat. And of course, as a player, you're like, well, I can. And then you go and you learn that actually, no, you can't. So you have to split up your party, or you just defend one side and let one side of the city get destroyed. And so, if you do that, if you choose to split up your party and you're successful, which would be very, very difficult and taxing tactically, then the town is completely unscathed. Whereas, um, perhaps if you let one side of the town go through, then a whole swath of the town is destroyed, and everything that was clickable in that section is gone now. And that's more of like a change to what is clickable. But I think that it's something we should keep in mind that perhaps our towns are changeable to a certain extent. And Cody even had an idea for a town that was like half, maybe like a port bridge kind of. So at certain times during the quest line, maybe the port is on one side of the map or the other, and maybe that forces the player to get to the town side that's going to be on. Either they take the very quick route and they go through and get on the boat ship and do a whole bunch of quests within that area while it's traveling across the sea or on its way to the other side. Um, or they take the land route and do a whole bunch of things that way. But either way, where the town is would influence what's clickable and how things are clickable. Like while the town is on the sea, maybe all of the fisheries open up and there are quests or interesting items that you can pick up from the fisheries. And all of those things would be sort of designated for the player. There'd be like a little icon you could click that would say that the fishmonger merchant guy is up, and I get a cool trident that I wouldn't ordinarily be able to get outside of the Ayatl storylines or something. Um, and then additionally, you could have hidden stuff. I know we talked about that briefly, but something like I Spy, where you see a little hinge that's slightly off on a door and you click it and it kind of swings open, and then there's a blackness inside of the house, and you're like, ooh, creepy. Then you click that, and now you're inside of the house. And then there's like a little dialogue that goes on with whomever is there, or maybe it's an encounter. And maybe it depends on what time of day or what time you go and try and do this event, because earlier on someone could be there and maybe later on they're not. All things to think about.
Yeah, that's pretty close to my. Oh, I'm sorry, we were doing asterisks, aren't we?
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is gonna be quick. I was just gonna agree that that's basically. I think that's the idea that I also have been thinking about is just finding different ways to take a static image and make it interactive and actually make it not static. Instead of doing like true animations, you just have like things moving around on it, or like I like the idea of like maybe a timer, like a day-night cycle that maybe goes at a regular time. Like it passes normally at instances, but if you have to travel from like one end of the city to the other, it speeds up to. So like maybe it might take you like 3 seconds to walk across the town, but the counter would speed up like 2 hours or something. So you can actually like progress through the day that way too.
I'm going to type my response to that in here so that other people can speak.
Okay. So like the interesting thing I'm hearing right now is that like there's this system of point and click where the player is depending on like external responses instead of like at least the formal point and click definition is where you have this clicker that's like its own UI where you can choose like out of talking or walking or opening or picking up or something like that. There's a range of the UI that the clicker becomes. So it'd be interesting to do it that way, but I mean, I'm not sure. Do we want to do that?
No.
Like, yeah. Good.
Yeah.
I feel like we should make it like it would make sense to almost make it a limited UI in some ways.
I think that will only be the case that we try and do it that way if we're limited by how much art we can pack into the game. For instance, if that door from before, the shadowy door thing, had where I right click on it and then it has a wheel of options like inspect or merchant or blank, and there are 4 options, then that would save us from having to do a screen where you go into the house and you talk with whoever is inside in a sort of Fire Emblem style setting where it's one character talking to another. You would just be able to check through the options for each thing. But I also think that gets a little bit of the subtlety that is within the system of discovery, like the sort of I Spy kind of finding things system, and it takes away the ambiguity of whichever encounter you're going to be getting yourself into, because you can just check for whichever type of encounter it would be. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I think in this kind of system, the more art we had would be better. So we would just have to see if we did do this, we'd have to just do as much as we can. I think keep it from being we don't want it to be boring. And whenever I mean like clicking on stuff, I'm hoping the idea of like a cow clicker isn't coming to mind.
The count clicker? What do you mean count clicker?
Cow, like COW. Basically like a Facebook like clicker game.
Oh, clicker. Okay, now I see what you mean. Yeah. So what would you have instead?
It would just I'm not sure what it would actually be, but it would be something more interactive than that. It would be it wouldn't be like let me see how many things I can click in a certain amount of time, or it would be I guess it would be closer to like maybe a board game kind of like interaction.
Like a drag and click, like things need to be certain places kind of thing?
Maybe. Like if you look at I'm looking at this picture of the Yogg map that is really the most complete reference I would have to like what I'm thinking of. We want it to be different, but like if you think of like the girl that's in the center, like that's your character, and represented similarly with like a little icon or something, and they've got to go to the castle, you would have them, I guess, click on the castle and go there, or maybe you could like point and click to different points, and as they're going through that way, like different things could happen. Like they could maybe run into a merchant or like a thug or something, and then different like scenarios would occur. Maybe they have like a perceptive, like somebody's like got some kind of like perception skill and they can notice something on the way. It really, I think it would just come. I mean, I guess it would kind of be like a clicking game, but you would just we just wouldn't make it suck. I guess. I don't know.
A non-sucky clicking game.
I'm thinking that what we do is like here's a big city, for example. You get to the big city and your character travels like if we have points on the map a lot like Final Fantasy Tactics, where there are little town nodes and then there's a line between the nodes and your character travels on the line between nodes. When you get to the node, it opens up a top-down view if the city's big enough, and a side view if the city isn't. So if we have a really sprawling city, then we could have a side view of certain sections, like maybe this is the arena over here, or like the market district or something like that. And then this would be prisons, and this would be... David, something's coming through on your side. And this would be... yeah, thank you, Frank. It is a beautiful city. And this would be slums, and this would be blah, blah, blah. When you click on this, it would zoom in and then kind of cut to a facade of whichever section you were in. And there would be different things to touch and interact with in that little facade area. I don't think that there necessarily needs to be any exaggerated input besides clicking on things, because that will take you into an interaction with whatever is there. And it doesn't necessarily need to be any more advanced than that, because the subtleties can come from how we interact, or what we're clicking on, and in which conditions what we're clicking on becomes available. So for instance, maybe I had this idea, it showed up in one of our discussions earlier about different city concepts. Maybe we're in a city in which there's a big tower, and depending on which way the sunlight is hitting the town, a certain section of the town is in darkness. It's like a giant sundial, basically. And so if this area is dark in the town, then if you enter into it, it's really shady, really seedy, and like a lot of the things that you'd ordinarily be able to click on wouldn't be there, and perhaps there are certain things that start moving toward you along the street line as well, little character portraits that start advancing on you, and it's not immediately clear who they are or what they are. And so maybe there's even a delay in this specific town between leaving an area and entering an area. So if you have to go somewhere and you have to do something, you sort of have to time which time of day you're getting there during, or during which light cycle. Maybe the player knows this before they get to the town, that the town is that way. I don't know. There's certain things you can do with availabilities of things to click on that I think would be really interesting, and we don't have to make the input any more complicated than just click.
So I think it'd be a good idea to take a lesson from Endless Space and have with such a tiered type city where you kind of zoom in, then zoom in, then zoom in, then you should be able to left click to zoom in and then right click to kind of go to the back layer. Like if I go to the market district and I end up only doing that by accident, it's just as easy as right clicking to zoom out to the cityscape again. That does make it less easy to do immersive type scenes where, like, if you saw shadows, you'll be like, oh, okay, shadows are moving towards me on the screen, time to right click. But it would be probably the most convenient way for players to navigate a town, although maybe not the most narratively alright.
So I agree with Frank about hover highlighting, and I agree with JJ about UI implementation of right-clicking to go back to the previous zone, left-click to go to the next one. Right-clicks out, left-clicks in.
What kind of highlight do you think we should have?
Maybe it's just as simple as the cursor changing when you're hovering over something that's interactable.
That's a thing we should think about. Is like, what does our cursor even look like?
That is something that I'm sure we'll get to when we're designing the UI. I definitely want to look at how cursors change to... I would like to do things with the cursor that make it much more intuitive for the player to understand when they're highlighting something that's interactable and when they're not. And as Frank said, maybe like if you highlight a doorway that's openable, you would put a small outline around the asset. I don't know. I think it would be better to do with the cursor, because then you don't have to do as many individual like highlights of things in the environment, but maybe for very special things in the environment we could do a small animation around them. Like, in Lord of the Rings, where they find the door that says "Speak, friend," and enter, and then it's got the cool like elven light that comes out around it.
Yeah.
That would be something that we could do for something very special. It'll save us time to just have the cursor interact with other.
Frank is typing. But what? God damn you, Frank.
I'm gonna go check the stream, see if we have any
All right.
questions. Hi, Energy Drank. Thanks for watching.
Not anymore. Alright then. Never mind, Frank. Yeah, why? Okay, so what we have then. Yeah. You got me. So what we have then as a series of point and clicks, at least for the map thing, is it's just things that people can find to click on. Like it's a very simple kind of find things, click things idea, which I think I'm okay with. I don't know. I guess it depends on the implementation. I guess we should talk about the rest of the map design. Not you too, Cody. Not you too.
So.
Oh, that was
do
my
we
cat.
think-
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, JJ.
Do we think that that whole Indiana Jones style, like, see like a line moving down a map till you get to a place and maybe like encounters happen along the way? Is that like the funnest we could possibly make map system?
I think it's more
I think we
like.
can do better.
Well, here's the issue I'm having. We're going to have a lot of systems in this game. A lot. Combat's going to be very complicated. Narrative is shaping up to have quite a few complexities. The towns are going to have depth, both aesthetically and in terms of layers of interactions. If we choose to do a day-night cycle, then that's going to be really intense for a player to find everything that needs to be found in a given playthrough. And unfortunately, given the way that we're designing the incentive systems, players aren't going to want to play through the same character twice very much. And so when we're looking at map movement, which is something that most RPGs take for granted or try and do something very interesting with and end up just making the player grind more, I think it would be better to have it be more simplistic, because the map isn't fun and it doesn't have to be fun. It's a way of representing information about locations to a player. As long as it looks nice and it does its job, we don't have to have interactions on the way to things. Like, and by that I mean you don't need to be drawing on the map or uncovering different parts of the map like a cartographer or something like that. I do think, and David and I talked about this earlier, that there should be times in which there are 2 different routes to get to a city, or maybe 3 different routes to get to a city, and you have to choose which one is best given the time constraint. And then you can only do things at whichever route you went to. And that would be an interesting way of implementing map interaction. But in terms of like redefining a map system, I don't think it's something we should do. Cody's next.
Hey, I'm gonna type this. Just make sure that you guys can understand me.
Okay.
Okay. I think the main reason that we went for a kind of map system is really just to make it simpler for ourselves, right? Because we didn't want to build all the assets for a town, and then if we're gonna have multiple towns, everything is an asset, or they all look the same. So I definitely think we should, if we go for the map system, we should make it simple. But I think there's probably there's got to be like a meet in the middle where it's like simplistic but still fun. Like my idea was hoping to make this interactive map thing enjoyable and unique. So there would hopefully we could get to like the middle part of that, to where it's easy. It's not too much. There's going to be a lot of artwork and assets done for it, but not nearly as much as like an actual town. Like I think in my head, the way I'd see it is like if you think about like a Final Fantasy game that has a town where you walk around and you go into like bars or whatnot, and then it also has a map. Then you could just like do that all on the map, but it would really you would interact on the map the same way you would the town. It would just I don't know be simpler looking.
You bring up a really good point there, Cody, and I think it's something that we should remember. Once you've gone to a town, you should be able to access all of the merchants that you've already talked to from outside of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. One thing that like I've always kind of had in my head is if like you went to like a blacksmith or whatever, or you went to a burger shop or whatever, you would just your character would have to get to the interaction part of that building in whichever way we decide. Either he walks there or you just click on it, and then kind of like in a JRPG style, there would be a box like a window that would pop up with some conversation text, and like on the left side you'd have the cavalier, on the right side you'd have like the blacksmith, and they just kind of pop up right like overlay over the map, something like that. Or you could even just just switch to a splash image of the blacksmith shop, and then you still have that overlay of two people talking.
So are you talking about reusing blacksmith artwork for each blacksmith that you encounter? Like it's always the blacksmith kind of thing?
We could do that. We could try to maybe do like 3 blacksmith variations or something. Like or maybe there's like racial blacksmiths. Like there's like the orc blacksmith, and I don't know. Maybe we could do some kind of weird implement like paper doll type thing where I'll make a very like static human figure, and then you could like make him look different by putting different like facial hair on him. I don't know.
We could keep dressing him up. Yeah. I like that idea, but it might have nothing to do with good game design. It's just fun to think about.
Yeah. Maybe we could just keep bringing him stuff like, and he's like, oh, okay, if you want me to wear it, I'll put it on. And it's just like you're my pretty blacksmith.
Fine, I guess. Things are happening in chat. Like obviously fake mustache.
Each new one he has like different, like very obviously glued on facial hair or whatever.
He could.
Yeah.
He could just have his own continuity.
So what's the next question we need to answer?
I guess this brings up the point of whether we want to have like reoccurring base elements of maps. Like do we want to create new shops, or do we? Yeah, and all those things. Because I guess we were talking about towns at a certain point. It's just areas that we call towns because we might not always be in a town. Which I'm still treating them that way in narrative, but at least for this conversation, I think we're talking about where most of this stuff makes sense with an inn and an actual real town thing. So yeah, do we want repeatable elements like the inn and the blacksmith? I think it's a relatively good idea. I don't even think it has to feel repetitive, as long as we like kind of make some kind of idea about why they're hanging around or why they keep switching around with you.
Cody, go ahead with your idea.
Oh, I was just thinking how other back to the like how many do we make, like a bunch of blacksmiths or whatever. We could do something kind of like Pokemon does, sort of, where you have like you go to like the blacksmith like chain shop and there's just like clerks working there. Instead of like the blacksmith who owns it, you just like you go and there's like the customer service representative.
We have franchises.
Yeah, like I mean it's kind of silly, but it might actually be like I don't know. It kind of seems appealing at the same time.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I don't see we're creating a fantasy game. It's not about realism certainly. So I think that's totally fine.
I have an idea about how we might handle this in such a way that it's interesting for the player without bogging down every time they want to go to a merchant to get into a town. Well, firstly, to answer a question, not all towns are going to have multiple different facades within them. It might just be a single facade if they're really small. Um, in fact, it might just be that most towns are very small, and the big hubs are the ones that you want to explore a whole bunch. But within the big hubs, there might be specialty merchants that sell different things, and some of the small towns might not even have a merchant within them, like a blacksmith or something like that. But once you visit a blacksmith, or you visit a specialty town, from then on, you can have them ship you that item, and it'll take a certain amount of turns or a certain amount of moves between different towns or something for that item to get to you. So that you don't have to go into the towns again. You can just select the town somewhere on the map, like right click it, for instance, and it would bring up a menu with the merchants that are there. You click the merchant, and then if you're not in the town, it would have ship this item to me, and you can have them do that.
Okay, our game has Amazon. Can we have an infinite feature, but you're using Crystal Ball? Yeah, basically.
I don't think it's. I mean, if we're reinforcing that the places that you move make a difference, the areas you go to make a difference, and we're trying to cut down on grinding, where players have to go through obstacles that are on the paths, then this is just a way to make the overall experience more enjoyable for the player. Instead of having to go through 2 layers of towns and then click the merchant and then access whatever I want to and then right click back out and then go to the town I wanted to go to, ostensibly fighting through at least one more mob to get there, I can just have them ship me the item.
No, I think it's a good idea. Um, it just makes me think of other like simple features like the way that the Fire Emblem games would have a like a convoy or whatever, so you didn't have to worry about
Nice.
who holds what items. You just had like everybody had their items there, and then you have what you like take into battle with you, like on you.
I think the issue with that for me is that, and I thought about that as well when you mentioned it, and the idea that I'm throwing forward is an expansion upon that system because I really liked it too. Is that it won't make narrative sense for the Lost Rider to have someone like that with him, and introducing another merchant to each of the storylines or a traveling merchant to each of the storylines who goes with you might feel a little shoehorned in. Whereas this system could ostensibly work for anyone.
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay. I wasn't sure whether I'm still not certain if it's the solution, but
It's a neat idea. I don't dislike it, and I think it could be a solution if it ends up working.
oh, that's a good point, Justice. Maybe small cities don't have that option,
Yeah,
and then there might be
something
specialty.
feels like a fair balance to that too. Like when you
Yeah.
go to a shop, it's like the shop that you go to for a while, and then you know you're going to be without one for a while, so you like strategically buy whatever you're going to get.
Yeah, like if there were an area that were like, the equivalent of northern Canada or something, where it's just tiny settlements and like people are like, what stores shipping? What? And that just doesn't exist there.
uh, and with those systems, we can really stress monetary inequalities or social hierarchical inequalities. Items will be scarcer. The money that you bring in will be scarcer. It'll be harder to get your items for certain characters.
It would be neat too if you probably are thinking about this too. But if you want a certain item, like say you do the whole shipping items, and if they're coming from really far away, they're much more expensive.
Yes, that'd be good. Like that, I hadn't even thought about that. That's really good.
And maybe you could even sell things and make a profit. Like if there's a particular resource from this town, and the further you take it away from that town, you could maybe it's like a special item that you can't have shipped to you. Like if you pick it up yourself and take it really far away, the further you get away, the more money you'll make or something. I don't know.
agree with that too. I think it would be interesting if you could, as certain characters, invest in stores to have them ship you things more quickly, have better stock.
Mm. Yeah.
Not all characters would have access to that option.
Yeah. Or you could maybe whoever ships them, maybe you have options. Make there's like one company that actually does it, or you could like go through like this more seedy like group of like smugglers to get it to you quicker.
That's cool.
Okay.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so certain cities would be run by different types. There'd be like a trade guild that operated mainly within
Yeah.
the central human hub, because that's where I wanted them lore-wise to operate anyway. So you have the big trade guild that goes in and deals with the Iotls. Oh, I like that too.
It would be really cool too, and this is probably just getting way too advanced. But if certain like shipping guilds or whatever, if they like travel through the same forest, they get better at like traveling through that area. Like maybe they know how to deal with the threats in that area, so they're quicker after they've done it a while. Almost like the trade guilds like level up.
Okay. Yeah, we
Like, does it-
wouldn't. Yeah, we wouldn't even have to like manifest that to the player in any way. Like tell them about it. Really, we could just have it happen so that the more times you ship through that company, the faster they are.
Yeah, and it'd be great if occasionally your shit doesn't make it to you,
Mm-hmm.
and you could maybe even like that'll like start a quest, and you can actually go to where they were last seen, and you can go get your goods back or something if you kill.
I think this could be a really good system for handling items in an interesting way. The issue will come in when you have um, when you're getting items from multiple playthroughs and bringing them with you and they're level locked. So maybe you have to buy back items that you had in previous playthroughs, and they're at like a discount price.
That's a good idea.
Um, and there will be a certain merchant company that specializes in items that you had in different playthroughs. There'll be like heroes items that they happen to find. Now they're selling them back to you, and so there'll be a sense of continuity within the world.
So we have like a real market economy, is what you're saying.
No, we just act like we do.
Well, yeah, but I mean the concept of one at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would actually make the whole world feel a lot more interesting. In general. For the
I'm
player.
behind it. I like this idea a lot.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to make the map a lot more interesting, I think. Which is something that we were just talking about. Maybe it needs to be more simplistic. I think movement can be simplistic, but this side of it can be interesting. And maybe you even see the trade company guys moving across the map, and you can meet up with them while they're moving from a city.
Yeah, that's neat. I think that's the kind of stuff that'll make the this map idea interesting and fun. Is if it seems, even though it's a map, it seems alive and moving around.
Oh, that what would be really cool is if you could use the trading company guys. Like if you're using you were talking earlier about them powering up the more you use them and becoming better because you're funding them basically. Is if you could use them to run into a mob that was going to give you trouble on your way somewhere.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Like them clean up for you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they
Yeah,
they take out the mob on the map on the way to you, and then you run and meet up with them.
Yeah, that's cool. You could even maybe use them to like if there's a quest line where you need to like smuggle yourself into a city, you could use them
Oh,
for that.
that'd be a really cool option. Yeah. Okay. Well, this system is really cool. I think if there's any way to program it easily, it should go in the demo. I don't think it'll be super easy, but it started reminding me of Super Mario 3.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they had the little monsters in the map, and yeah.
Are you talking about the maps with the little like hammer bros moving around?
Yeah.
That's
I think, right?
maybe that's where this whole idea is coming from.
We've got Atex Studios in the chat.
Who was that?
Wait.
I had an idea based on what Kirby said earlier. Hold up, let me find it in the notes. Where the decision making on the map screen would be deciding which routes to take to get places faster. So, like maybe at crossroads, the character stops and you have options to take all the available paths, or maybe like go off and investigate something in the wilderness, because the current map system doesn't allow exploration like that. So having sort of waypoints that you stop at and have to make decisions would be probably a good way of getting around that. I also think it'd be pretty interesting to have players have to make decisions to get somewhere quicker or safer. Let's say bandits are going to attack a town. Are you gonna go through the bandit infested, road, or are you gonna go around and just try and get there quickly without, taking a fight?
That's information that I think will manifest itself to the player through the narrative. Sometimes there'll be things like that are narratively pertinent. Like, I have something I need in that town. There are bandits, and you can see the bandits on the map along a route. Do I go through the bandits to get through like 2 stops, or do I take 5 stops to get to the town? And will the town even be there when I get there? The section that I need to be there, if I let the bandits all stay. Maybe it's much more enticing than that. Maybe there's a secondary, like David and I were talking about side quests, or not side quests, but like a subsidiary storyline that goes around which decisions you make in going to the left or to the right to get to a certain town. And maybe the conclusion of a subsidiary quest line is on the other way to the town. So instead of going to the bandits, you have a real reason that you'd want to be going to the left versus the right. So do you sacrifice the subsidiary quest line payoff, or do you sacrifice a better outcome on the main quest line? Which one matters more to the player? Become very interesting, I think, but all conjecture now.
Have we talked about how we want to actually do the like overworld map, like not in towns, like everything around the towns? Are we just going to do a bunch of like inner, like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking little town hubs. Like, okay, for anyone who hasn't played Final Fantasy Tactics, I'm thinking of this like Final Fantasy Tactics. The map can be more stylized if we want it, but basically you have little hubs and some, or little nodes, and some nodes are bigger than others, and there are lines drawn between the nodes, and you follow a line to get to another node, and sometimes on that line can be an enemy. So if you want to get to a town, you'll have to route around the enemy sometimes, unless you want to take an encounter. I think it's fairly simplistic, but with all of the things that we're adding in, it can become very interesting.
I see.
So the character in this idea would always be pretty much traveling on a road line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we would just have try to get creative with branching road lines.
Yes, the map design would actually have to be thought out.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the or not, I'm not looking at it, I'm thinking about the overall like continental like map of Warren that you've showed previously.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm wondering if we're going to want to break that up into like country regions, or so we're going to have like a world map, then like a region map, and then the region map's going to have more hubs like towns and forests and other points of interest that will have maps for themselves, and those maps will have caves and
no big continental map, smaller regional maps that are so when you start a character, you will just see the regional map that you're in, and there will be
that's like a
yeah,
country or something.
right, and there will be lines that go to the outside, and you can follow those lines if you want. But sometimes it won't be narratively. There'll be no narrative reinforcement to do so, and the paths may even be blocked with really strong enemies to encourage the player not to go outside.
Okay.
Past until a certain level or something like that. And for like the Law Strider, maybe his points that he can go to, like maybe there are no roads except for between like 3 towns or something, and the roads get added in later.
That's a really neat idea. Like I don't know if this is exactly what you were talking about. It sounds like it was, but like maybe a certain class based on their knowledge and the people they know, they may have like hidden roads available to them.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Like if like the Cabaretto, you know, she's part of like this assassin. Like they may have like hidden roads.
That's so
that they
cool.
take.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that. That'd be so cool. The Cabaretto could even be a part of one of these companies. That would make sense for the storyline, for what they wanted to do anyway. Maybe they're traveling as part of a merchant guild as like the entertainment arm of it.
Yeah.
So you can use merchant guild paths, and maybe the merchant guilds develop new paths the more you fund them as well.
That's good. I like that.
Oh, this is going to be so cool. I hope. To which direction we allow our players to go. Okay, well, first things first, I only have 5 more minutes left. If you guys want to continue this meeting, you can, but it won't be streamed. As for ATEC Studios, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions for the next 5 minutes, I'd love to answer them. We all would. But let's think about this question. The limitation in the direction we allow our players to go, I think there is, depending on the class. Law Strider should be put in like a very small 4-town hub or something like that. And then maybe, let's say the orcs go and invade, that makes a road that comes in that wasn't there before. And maybe you're outside of the town at the time and the road appears and you see a whole bunch of units coming down it. And you're like, no! So you run back to your other town, but it's already too late. That could be an interesting way of taking a road and introducing it and then having it so that you can go back along that road and make the decision to go into Orcish territory later as a character. Or as the player. You could stay within that area and follow the narrative that way, or you could go into the Orcish area and do whatever you would need to do. And maybe that answers both questions. It's going to be incredibly open to interpretation. You kind of take it however what you want to think. But this does open up even more player agency options, David. Language library it's going to use. Unity. I think this could be very interesting. If you're ATEC Studios, if you're interested at all, we have a design discussion from like an hour or 2 ago that you can look at more narrative stuff that we were considering. And we have a few other videos too, but those are ability design stuff and not nearly as interesting, I don't think. They might be interesting to you, I don't know. Well, I think we need to do this more often, given the caliber of ideas that came from it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good way to. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I just said just came up now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a great way to do that.
Good. Yeah, let's try and do more of these wherever they're applicable. Now. We're looking, Jacob Blockman, we're looking at narrative design paths for towns and cities right now. The whole stream, the broadcast should be up as soon as this stream ends, about 5 minutes later, and you can look through and watch it. I'm sorry, but we're gonna be ending our design stream in about 2 minutes. Um, we should be streaming every other day. We don't have a great dedicated stream time yet, but if you look for us, we'd love to have you, and we'll answer any questions that you have anytime that we can. Second question, we only allow people to travel to nodes we show. Correct. They can only travel to the nodes we show. Frank, I agree with you. We shouldn't bite off more than we can chew. Let's not. Let's look at these as wish list features until we talk with Christian and we talk with Jay, and figure out what's programmable in the time that we have. The other thing is we can stretch goal. Sorry, we can stretch goal this kind of thing, and make it easier for ourselves.
Yeah.
Not all of it has to be available from the very beginning.
Maybe we can get around the whole exploration issue by trying to find a way to implement the hidden roads type idea.
Mhm.
Like maybe you can travel a certain path slower to have a chance of discovering a hidden path somewhere that takes you to like an ancient ruins or something like that. Because in a game that's open world like this, it's really kind of important for players to feel like they're discovering new things, because why bother traveling at all if you're just going from one place to another without anything in between.
Right. I think certain classes will go through more areas for different reasons. Like perhaps the Lost Strider only has so much of his map developed at the very beginning, and you can't go outside of the town. But then as the orcs invade, that'll open up another route. And then once you get into orcish territory, if you pull back the map, or for whatever reason we pull back the map at some point, it'll show all of the locations that he used to visit as like a mercenary or whatever, if that's still part of his storyline. So you'd see all of the places you could still go for the second part of his storyline, or the second part of the storyline. Those are places you could explore. So the player doesn't really feel cheated that they only had so much space to move around in at the beginning. Ritsmith could use roads that aren't built yet. That's also really cool.